Well, millions of college grads saddled with student loan debt, and that burden might just get worse starting July 1st. That's if Congress doesn't get its act together and stop interest rates on government-subsidized loans from doubling. President Obama today urged Congress to act fast.
The message is, as you guys embark on this day of action, I want to make sure you keep this going. Don't stop until it's actually done. There's nothing more powerful than millions of voices that are calling for change, and all of your voices can make a difference. So keep telling Congress to do what's right, to get this done. Tell them now is not the time to double interest rates on your student loans. Tell them to double down on an investment in a strong and secure middle class, and that means your education.
And as interest rates are set to go up, students that do graduate can't find jobs. 50% of them are unemployed or underemployed. And check out these sobering statistics out of the Bureau of Labor. 115,000 janitors today have bachelor's degrees, 83,000 bartenders, 323,000 restaurant servers, and 80,000 truck drivers, all of them working these jobs with a college degree. They are among the millions that have fallen into this student debt trap. So where has the pursuit of the American dream gone wrong? And with so many students crippled with debt, how could that impact our already troubled economy? To talk about this, Stef Gray, economic justice organizer for Change.org, joins us now. Welcome, Stef. So let's say interest rates double. How would that make a massive problem that much worse?
Well, students and their families are going to be paying thousands more over the lifetime of these loans. In New York alone, students and families are going to be paying $420 million.
And so we just saw there President Obama today. He was urging Congress to act fast. How optimistic are you that they will take action?
Not very, just because of how much Congress has been gridlocked and how they continually throw middle-class policies under the bus and pit them against the Stafford loan interest rate increase to just sort of put congresspeople and their constituents in very difficult positions, as opposed to taxing the rich, which, you know, it's a pretty easy decision for people who are part of the 99%. But then again, the majority of congressmen are millionaires, so that's not one of their priorities.
So you think they're kind of disconnected from the trials and tribulations facing millions of students these days?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, it's easy to detract from the stats and facts showing that this is a crisis holding back the American dream for an entire generation, when all they say is, oh, well, everyone in Generation Y or the millennials, whatever you want to call it, they're just so lazy and entitled. You know, that's a great way to have people just stop right there instead of doing their homework to see the real issues behind the matter. Furthermore, the GOP is just trying to be obstructionary because it's an election year, so the more they can hold back any sort of economic progress that would help the poor and middle class, the more they can just blame it on Obama and the Democrats, who, of course, haven't been very helpful either. I mean, they're mostly just in it for the youth vote.
All right, we just had there the student loan countdown clock set to take effect July 1st. So counting down, because this is very important and would mean a lot for a lot of young people here in the U.S. You know, Stef, student loans have surpassed $1 trillion. So that is greater than the total credit card debt in America. How in the world did we get here?
You know, a lot of the factors are very similar to those that led to the housing bubble. You've got these predatory lenders who are running with practically no regulations. Private lenders don't have to provide income-based repayment. They don't have to provide any sort of default prevention options. And meanwhile, the federal government outsources a lot of its collections. So, you know, the federal student loans, the Department of Education doesn't really try to block defaults there either. The whole system is basically designed for students to have extreme difficulties paying off their loans unless they magically graduate and end up at a $50,000 a year job, which isn't the reality for most American students who can barely afford to feed themselves when waiting tables.
You know what a lot of people are saying, some critics are saying that, you know, the responsibility rests with the students. They are the ones that took out these loans in the first place and therefore now have to live with the responsibility of paying them back. What do you think about that?
The students knew what they were doing when they took out their loans, but it's absurd to expect that all American 18-year-olds should have the working knowledge of a veteran debt lawyer. No one's asking for a handout. People are just asking for fairer repayment options and for interest rates to not send their debt spiraling out of control. I mean, gosh, if my student debt was a home loan or a credit card, at least I could discharge it in bankruptcy or have options with debt management plans to lower my monthly payments and interest rates. There's no options with student debt. You can't even discharge it in bankruptcy if you're disabled and living below the poverty line. They'll just take your Social Security. So it's the system. It's not the students.
And that's it. It's one of those things that will haunt you to the very end, and they will make sure that they do everything they can to get that. Not very many options or no options, it seems, to get out of student debt. And, you know, so if we're seeing a combination of a bunch of things, skyrocketing tuition here in the U.S., interest rates going up, but when they do graduate, they're facing a very bleak job market.
Well, you know, it's easy to yell, get a job at a generation that you just don't understand. You have these baby boomers who don't realize that tuition has skyrocketed 600% between 1980 and 2010, far outpacing any other consumer price index. You have them yelling at these students, and they're completely disconnected.
And
if you yell, get a job, it just shows that you're ignorant and that you haven't picked up a newspaper in the past 2 years.
Yeah, and I do know for a fact many people that are trying, it's just the supply does not correlate with the demand right now. So many young graduates without a job, many of them saddled by tens of thousands of dollars of student debt. I mean, how is this affecting the life choices that young people make?
Well, they're not able to buy homes when they want to. They're not even able to rent apartments if their credit gets wrecked. 60% of employers check credit when hiring. So there goes the opportunity to actually get a job, which would help pay off the debt. And then if you do end up getting a job that doesn't pay very well, then again, if you can't adjust your monthly payment to something that would be fair to both yourself and your lender, then you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Again, all of these forces push students into default. In some states, you'll even lose your driver's license. How are you supposed to get a job then?
Absolutely.
So essentially, it's just going to hold back the American dream for this whole generation.
Becomes a vicious cycle, it sounds like.
If young Americans can't afford to buy homes or cars, it's going to lag the entire economy.
So what alternatives are there?
Out of our parents' homes.
I mean, what are some alternatives? Because this is a huge problem. A lot of young people are becoming disillusioned and saying that my degree that I got isn't really worth much. Or if I were to get a degree, I shouldn't have spent tens of thousands of dollars to get myself into this situation. What are the alternatives? Maybe go abroad to get that degree where it's more affordable?
Perhaps. I mean, speaking of abroad, at least in Australia, if you've got high student debt, you don't have to start making payments until you're making at least $50,000 a year. So if you're a teacher or social worker and you're making below that line, then you're not going to have to pay off your student debt until your salary rises to that level. And there is a mandatory income-based repayment system that covers all federal and private student loans in Australia. And, you know, a lot of people might look at that and think, oh, well, you know, those poorers don't want to pay off their debt. But look at Australia's economy right now. They're booming. They're not holding back their youth. They understand that this is the future of their country.
And now looking at the bigger picture, you know, we saw these Occupy Wall Street protests. A lot of what they were protesting is this growing income inequality gap that we can't deny is happening today here in the U.S. And a recent CBS poll found that 2/3 of Americans believe there is too big of a gap between the haves and the have-nots. And is this student debt dilemma playing into that problem?
Absolutely. And the gap is generational. Absolutely. I mean, you could have, 20 or 30 years ago, you still would have been able to get a decent entry-level job with just a high school diploma. Nowadays, that's not an option at all. Whether you have a BA, a master's, I mean, these entry-level jobs ask for 5-7 years of experience. How are you supposed to get that when you're 22 and you just graduated?
A lot of questions and a lot of, hopefully, doesn't get even worse, and Congress does act before July 1st. We're going to have to wait and see what happens. Stephanie, thanks so much for coming on the show. That was Stef Gray, Economic Justice Organizer for Change.org.